Believe it or not, the plant pictured here is a species in the genus Euphorbia, commonly known as Euphorbia or spurge, although certain species may have their own common names. Euphorbia is the fourth largest genus of flowering plants, with over 2,000 species of widely varying sizes, forms, and textures. Over 500 of those species are succulents. I know many of you are familiar with this euphorbia, Euphorbia pulcherrima, or the poinsettia. You may also be familiar with garden euphorbias like this one, Euphorbia amygdaloides, or the wood spurge. You may also know this popular garden hybrid, Euphorbia diamond frost. So you can see that the familiar herbaceous euphorbias have a wide variety of forms, and this will be true of the succulent euphorbias as well. It would be impossible for me to go over how to ID all of the succulent euphorbias, or even give a general set of ID characters. So I'll be going over some of the different forms you can expect to see, and how to ID some of the more common succulent species, especially ones you might see if you visit Longwood Gardens. Some succulent euphorbias will bear oblong or linear leaves at the top of a thick, almost pineapple-looking caudex, like Euphorbia buplurifolia, also known as the pinecone spurge. Some will have numerous, long, cylindrical branches with a center cluster of flowers, like Medusa's head euphorbia, Euphorbia flanagani. Others, like Euphorbia canariensis, or the Canary Island spurge, will look like true cacti. One way to tell if a plant is a cactus or not is to look for the presence of areoles. If there are spines arising from an areole, it's a cactus. If not, it's a succulent, since succulents don't have areoles. And we'll discuss this a little bit more in depth in the cacti unit. In the bottom right, you can see what the areoles and spines of a prickly pear cactus look like. Compare this to the spines of Euphorbia canariensis, and you can see that those spines are in symmetrical pairs, and these are actually modified stipules arising from a brown shield, which are those brown rounded areas that you can see going along the rib. Euphorbia inopla, the pincushion euphorbia, also looks like a true cactus. But in this case, what look like cactus spines are actually old flower peduncles, which kind of blows my mind. It's pretty cool. Here you can see the flowers. As the peduncular spines age, they turn gray. Euphorbia lactea, also known as the mottled spurge, because of its frequently mottled or variegated leaves, is another species that looks like a cactus, and like some cacti, even displays cristate growth. Cristate means that the plant has taken on a crested form. I've circled the regular growth on the bottom right to compare to the cristate or crested growth above it. Also, the specific epithet, lactea, refers to the milky sap that all euphorbias produce. This milky sap is one of the few common ID traits among the varying species in the genus. Here we have Euphorbia millii, or the crown of thorns. Crown of thorns is a densely branched bush with paired spines along the stems and obovate to oblanceolate to spatulate leaves that are in a whorled arrangement on the ends of the branches. Here you can see the pairs of spines and the narrow oblanceolate leaves that have entire margins and a mucronate apex. And here's a close-up of the spines. There are some beautiful variegated crown of thorns cultivars on the market. Crown of thorns will bloom throughout the year, producing flowers that are typical of the genus, which is the other key ID feature that will usually help you identify an unknown species of Euphorbia. Euphorbia flowers are so unique that they have their own terminology. The inflorescence is called a cyathium, which consists of a cup-like involucre containing a single pistil and male flowers with a single stamen. The involucre sits on the cyathophylls, which are bract-like structures that are showy, often brightly colored, and usually occur in groups of 2. Now I'll just show you a few other species. This is Euphorbia obesa, which is a cute, little round ball, which often produces offsets as it grows. It has a number of sports-related common names, such as living baseball, or basketball, or golf ball. You get the picture. Euphorbia polygona is a deeply ribbed species that has peduncular spines which may fall off. As you can see here, this is also a clumping species. This is the cultivar snowflake, which has a kind of whitish-blue glaucous coating. Euphorbia tyrucale, commonly known as sticks on fire, has narrow, leafless, pencil-like, cylindrical, upright stems that turn bright orange in the sun. The coloration of the species is just wonderful. And you can see in this image that a few tiny juvenile leaves are retained at the top of some of the stems. And lastly, we have Euphorbia trigona, which has 3 or 4 prominent ribs with obovate to oblanceolate to spatulate leaves that have entire margins and a mucronate apex. This species is deciduous and will drop its leaves in the fall. Some will be dark green, and other cultivars might be more of a reddish purple, like this cultivar, rubra. As you can imagine from the varied nature of the genus, the cultivation characteristics will vary somewhat as well, depending on the species. In general, you'll probably want full sun or bright direct light with some afternoon shade and a well-draining cactus mix. Be sure to wear gloves when propagating or repotting the species because that milky sap is a skin irritant. For more specific information on the species I've discussed, please see the link I included on the Moodle book page or check the Euphorbia plant fact sheets. Whew, that was a lot. Don't worry, I won't expect you to memorize every species we covered for the ID quiz and final, and I'll give you several different images of some of the different species on those quizzes. The key takeaways for this genus are the thick, milky sap and the distinct flowers. The presence of spines is also another key ID feature for this unit, at least. If you encounter an unknown Euphorbia in the wild, definitely check the spines. You should look to see if they're in symmetrical pairs of 2 arising from a shield, or if they have remnants of old flowers on them. If you have some cacti nearby, you can also compare them to the areoles of the cacti. And with that, we conclude our discussion of some of the succulent species in the genus Euphorbia, also known as Euphorbia or spurge.